like to begin today by recognizing and acknowledging that we are on the lands of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Waukesha, Wea, Miami, Muscatan, Ottawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. These lands were the traditional territory of these native nations prior to their forced removal. These lands continue to carry the stories of these nations and their struggles for survival and identity. As a land grant institution, the University of Illinois has a particular responsibility to acknowledge the peoples of these lands, as well as the histories of dispossession that have allowed the growth of this institution for the last 150 years. We are also obligated to reflect on and actively address the histories and the role that this university has played in shaping them. This acknowledgement and the centering of Native peoples is a start as we move forward for the next 150 years. Welcome to the Fall 2021 Friday Forum and Conversation Cafe series, Unpacking Racism, What Are We Carrying? We just have a couple of announcements from Diversity Ed. We ask that you join us next Thursday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. in the Psych Building, room 32 for our iJourney workshop entitled I'm Aware, Examining Our Privilege. From the University Y, keep an eye out as you come into the Y for the semester-long Art at the Y exhibit, Future Spaces and Community Places by Stacey Robinson and collaborators that is showcased in Murphy Gallery and Clark Lounge when you first enter the building. Join us here again next week at the same time and place for our Friday Forum and Conversation Cafe with Stacey Robinson to discuss future spaces and community places, closing the gap on town and gown. For anyone who is attending their first Friday Forum and Conversation Cafe today, Conversation Cafe is hosted by the Diversity and Social Justice Education Office and is a part of the Office of Inclusion and Intercultural Relations Lunch on Us series and focuses on presenting topics important and emerging issues on diversity and social justice, both on campus and beyond. Friday Forum is a weekly lecture series held each semester that strives to raise awareness about national and international trends and events and provides a space to address topics of relevance and urgency in our society. This semester, the University Y is excited to be partnering with the Diversity and Social Justice Education for the entire Fall 2021 semester-long series. This semester, Friday Forum and Conversation Cafe sessions will be accessible in person at the YMCA or virtually through Zoom, Facebook Live, and streamed by Urbana Public Television on YouTube.
Thank you so much. I'm Cynthia Marcella from the University YMCA, and I have just a couple announcements to continue. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome to our series, Unpacking Racism, What Are We Carrying? As we're hearing about and experiencing continual amounts of local, national, and global racism, it weighs heavy on our communities. Join the YMCA and Diversity Ed in addressing the legacies of racism. Engage in dialogue with activists, academics, and artists as they share perspectives on the intersections of racism and reimagine solutions to move forward. I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors for this semester series. They are as follows: Student Cultural Programming Fee, which has graciously provided lunch for everyone this week and all of the following weeks, so make sure you take advantage of that. Women and Gender and Global Perspectives Program, Humanities Research Institute, LGBT Resource Center, Women's Resource Center, Education Justice Project, Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Office of the Provost, the Center for Global Studies, First Mennonite Church of Champaign-Urbana, Center for Advanced Study, Latino Studies, Illini Hillel, and College of Fine and Applied Arts, and many more. Today, I am happy to introduce our incredible speaker, Rebecca Ginsberg, who will be sharing about the Education Justice Project's new initiative, Prison to Gown. Following Rebecca, there will be a few minutes for a Q&A. So if you're attending online, I urge you to submit your questions in the chat. And then if you're in person, you'll find orange cards on your seat where you can jot down your question, and then we'll periodically be walking around to collect those throughout Rebecca's talk. So to dig into Rebecca Ginsberg, she is a co-founder and current director of the Education Justice Project, a unit of the University of Illinois. EJP is a comprehensive college and prison program, that has brought together hundreds of scholars, students, and teachers dedicated to the vision of a more just and humane world. Through its work over the last 12 years, EJP supports critical awareness of incarceration and re-entry, with special focus on the responsibility of institutions of higher education to engage systems involved individuals during and after incarceration. Rebecca received her bachelor's degree in English from Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, her JD from the University of Michigan Law School, and a PhD in architectural history from the University of California at Berkeley. It was while she was a graduate student at Berkeley that she first became involved in prison education. Her most recent book is an edited collection called Critical Perspectives on Teaching in Prison, and she is currently working on a prison abolition reader. Rebecca has been a resident of Urbana-Champaign for 16 years, and she shares a home with her husband, William Sullivan, and daughters Anna and Isabella. It is her great pride that her children don't find anything unusual about the fact that she teaches in a prison. With further ado, I introduce Rebecca, and we will pull up and share her PowerPoint just really quickly. Here we go. All right, there you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I haven't felt this for a year and a half. Thank you for allowing me to come before you with my face exposed. I know there are several audiences to this talk, and I would appreciate it if you could let me know if you can't hear me, whether here in person or on Facebook or on Zoom. I hope there's a way for them to communicate so I can adjust my sound accordingly. And? Okay, is that better?
Yes.
I love that feedback right away. Please keep it coming. Okay. Okay, I'm glad to be here. Let's get going. Using somebody else's computer is always a little. I'm trying to advance the slide here, Cynthia. I'm doing what I usually do. Sorry.
You want to advance to the next slide?
Yeah.
You just click the mouse and it will go to the next one.
That's such great technology. Thank you.
No problem.
The Education Justice Project has been providing educational opportunities to individuals incarcerated at Danville Correctional Center for over a decade. In recent years, it's become clear that it's not enough. While this is important work, it doesn't begin to meet the needs of our incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students. Repeatedly, we've seen our students make great academic strides while in prison and then struggle to enroll in university upon release. We've especially been discouraged to see them struggle to enroll here at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. This is a shame. Not only would it be good for EJP students and other formerly incarcerated individuals to attend the University of Illinois and complete their degrees here, it would be good for the University of Illinois to lean more fully into its reputation as a campus committed to education justice and a land-grant institution. Accordingly, we have launched a new program that you're here to learn about today. We aim to make the Urbana campus a more welcoming place for students who have incarceration backgrounds. We'd love to see the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign become an institution that supports their success from the moment they leave the prison gates until they don their graduation gowns. This afternoon, I'm going to share our vision, our plans, and our motivations. There are many, many reasons to fight for educational equity, for individuals who have been incarcerated. I'm going to start with the concern that brings us here today, racial justice. Now, I know that all of you have previously seen lots and lots of data and charts and graphs that demonstrate the fact that we don't currently have educational equity across races in the United States. I'm just going to show you a few slides right now. Don't worry, it's not going to be a data-rich presentation, but I want to remind us of the challenge that we're facing. Most of my data comes from a 2019 report published by the American Council on Education. This chart, for example, shows US graduation rates, US high school graduation rates in 2013 and 2016 by race. There's a lot here. Don't worry, we're not going to go into the weeds. What I want you to pay special attention to is the graduation rates in 2016 for these populations, Black, Hispanic, and white people, because those are the populations most represented in our state's prison system. You can see that the graduation rates, again, high school graduation rates have been going up. You can also see that there's not equity across the different racial groups, with Black students graduating at about 76.4% and white students graduating in 2016 from high school about 88.3%. Hispanics, 79.3%. There are many, many ways to look at educational equity. Let's move on to talk about persistence rates. By persistence rates, we mean the rate at which people who enrolled in their first year of college and completed that first year of college came back for at least 1 month of their second year. That's the persistence rates. And we're looking here at the persistence rates among a cohort of students that started in fall 2011. Again, there's a lot here. We're not going to go into the weeds, but I just want to draw your particular attention to the fact that these graphs indicate persistent rates by race, and the lowest persistent rate is 81.7 for Black students. The highest persistence rate actually is Asians, and the highest among that is Asian women at 95.9%. Among African Americans, the lowest is among African American men at 79.8%. Let's talk about graduation rates from college. This is data from the year 2017. Well, this isn't graduation rates from college. This is the percent of the population 25 and older who have a bachelor's degree. So, number of people living in the United States who are 25 and older who have a bachelor's degree in 2017. Across all racial demographics, across all peoples, 21.3% of people living in the United States in 2017 who were 25 and older had a bachelor's degree. But let's start to break that down by race a little bit so it gives us another perspective on racial equity, or the lack thereof. 15.3% of Black people living in the United States in 2017 had a bachelor's degree, and only 12.2% of Latino population had a bachelor's degree as of 2017. So again, the same story over and over and over again. This is the last demographic. This is the last slide I'm going to show you with those sort of demographics. But again, the purpose of showing this to you is because I want to make the impression and remind us all that racial inequity in the higher education sphere is alive and well in the United States. If we look at Illinois in particular, the figures that you have in front of you now show the population breakdown by race in the state of Illinois as of last year. So 13.9% of the population in Illinois is African American, 18.2% of the population in Illinois is Latina. And let's compare that base rate of the proportion of different racial groups in the population with their attendance at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So I guess I can ask right now of the people here in person, what are you expecting to see? Based on what I've already shown you, do you think that Black and Latinos at the University of Illinois are represented at the same level of their proportion of the population of the state of Illinois? No, it's kind of, we're all expecting to see lower numbers. I guess the question is, how low are the numbers, right?
Especially with the Black communities right now, I don't know if enrolled at least 500 students this year, so that's a problem. And just us not having high retention rate as other populations on campus is definitely an issue. So I could definitely see how it would affect, graduation rate and the acceptance of migrant students and students.
And we're going to dive into a lot of the things that you said. I know that people didn't hear them online. The visitor was talking about retention rates and graduation rates and how they've impacted different groups. So let's just see how this plays out. As of September 8th, 2021, this data is from the University of Illinois, the population of the overall student body, including graduate and undergraduate students, is 5.6% Black. So 5% Black opposed to 14% in the population of Illinois, and 11% Latino compared to 18% Latino in the population of Illinois. So this is what we mean by educational inequity, that populations are not represented as we would expect given their proportion in the general population. I lost my place. Oh. So sorry. I was expecting to be able to use my notes on the screen, but it wasn't possible. So now I'm glad I printed out my notes, but I'm a little lost. Where I am. So there are many reasons that scholars have pointed to explain the racial inequity in higher education in the United States. The person who just spoke pointed to some of them, and they relate to factors ranging from poverty, because higher education costs money, to parental involvement with higher education, to college readiness. Those intersect with all sorts of other factors, including gender and other considerations that come into play. And we know that it's a complex brew of different considerations that lead us to have the shape of the racial inequities within higher education, and particularly the disadvantaged position that Black and Brown students on campuses like the University of Illinois find themselves in. Within EJP, we're interested in yet another explanation for the unequal educational outcomes across racial demographics. Our experience and the research suggests that criminal justice involvement is an underappreciated factor in the racial differences in college admissions and graduation rates. And I put that on the screen because I'm going to repeat it again because it's one of my take-home messages today. Criminal justice background, that is to say involvement in incarceration or even having a criminal record, is underappreciated as a factor in the racial differences in college admission and graduation rates. In particular, policies and practices that actively or implicitly discriminate against or put obstacles in the way of students with criminal backgrounds, make it less likely that Black and Brown individuals will get into in the first place, and then succeed at universities like the University of Illinois and other schools like it. These obstacles, whether background checks, social isolation, or outright hostility to their presence on campus, are one reason that formerly incarcerated people are 8 times less likely to complete college than the general public. And we don't even have good data on formerly incarcerated people who wish to enroll in college, but decide not to apply or abandon the process because they anticipate or they encounter degrading treatment during the process. This connects directly to race. We know that people of color in the United States are disproportionately more likely to have criminal records and to be sentenced to prison. Those formerly incarcerated people who are being discouraged from applying to college or encountering obstacles once they arrive on campus, those are disproportionately Black and Brown people. Indeed, they're disproportionately Black and Brown men. Latino men face a 1 out of 6 chance of being incarcerated during their lifetime, and African-American men, I can't believe I've been giving these talks for a decade and I'm still saying the same numbers. It's shameful that I'm still saying the same numbers. African-American men stand a 1 out of 3 chance of being incarcerated during their lifetime. So those same people who are encountering the obstacles of getting into our universities and staying at our universities because of their criminal justice background are more likely to be Black and brown people, and they're more likely to be Black and brown men. As a consequence, any serious plan to create a more racially diverse student body or staff or professoriate so that universities in real life look more like this idealistic stock photo that I pulled from online, must affirmatively support the success of individuals who have incarceration backgrounds. We have to go out of our way to help people who have been to prison to get into our universities and our colleges if we are interested or serious about addressing racial equity. Unfortunately, this is not rocket science. We know how to do this. First, we can look to the model of what other campuses have done. And I'm going to start with what Cal State University Fullerton has done with a project called Project Rebound. I'm going to talk at the same time, I guess, about Rutgers. I don't have photographs of Rutgers University. They've also been doing this for many, many years. But the programs are similar in that both universities, Rutgers and Cal State Fullerton, have offered wraparound services to their formerly incarcerated students. These services include support groups, academic advising, specialized academic advising, housing, and I'm showing you now a photograph of the house that the Cal State Fullerton group has put aside for accommodating formerly incarcerated students because people with criminal records have such a difficult time getting housing on their own, tuition assistance, transportation assistance, and so much more. Here's the Fullerton house again, and it's a really wonderful story about how the project at Cal State Fullerton ended up with this house, which is a lovely house, if you want to ask me later. Both Fullerton and Rutgers programs report high levels of academic success among practicing students, participating students. In fact, at Rutgers, the graduation rate for the formerly incarcerated students who are part of this program is higher than that of the graduation rate for other students on campus. Importantly, and this is the Fullerton house again, many of the talented students that Rutgers and Cal State Fullerton attract report that they would not have considered applying to these universities or attending these universities if not for the availability of these programs, which is to say that universities who do not have programs like this are missing out on talented students. So Cal State Fullerton, Rutgers, UC Berkeley, Cal State LA, these are just some examples of some of the programs. They tend to be on the coasts, some of the universities that have already moved ahead in accommodating in very forward-looking and assertive ways the needs of their students on campus with criminal records. Can you not hear me? I think the questions are supposed to come later. And I think it's because of the issue of sound that people on the Zoom and at FaceTime can't hear you. But if you could write it down, I'll be happy to take the question later. Thank you very much. So we can look to other campuses. We can also look to our own campus. We can look to models that exist right here at Illinois. Our campus has done, frankly, an exemplary job of recognizing that particular demographics need special assistance to participate in collegiate life and reach their fullest academic potential. Illinois' record of welcoming students with physical disabilities is one of the points of pride on this campus. Illinois was the first in the country to offer special, dedicated programs for this population, recognizing their distinct needs and attempting to build infrastructure, literally building infrastructure, building ramps, building accommodating systems within buildings and the landscape that allowed them to participate fully on campus. And this effort has been wildly successful, and Illinois is regarded, and rightly so, as a leader in this field. A more recent example, and concerns the Chaz Veterans Center, which was founded in 2015. And I'm sure some of you have been to it, maybe? Yep, good. Some people in the audience are nodding, yay. The center recognizes that veterans, especially wounded veterans, do not succeed to their potential when they are simply thrown into the regular campus population and expected to figure it out for themselves while dealing with their injuries and while dealing with their trauma. One of the priorities, therefore, of the Chaz Center is to create spaces for community and encourage mutual support around the veterans. The needs of formerly incarcerated students at Illinois, who are already here, but operating more invisibly than I would like to see, and without the support I would like them to have, the needs of formerly incarcerated students will depend on many factors, including how long they have been out of prison, their age, how long they were incarcerated, their familiarity with college campuses and the culture of higher education, and much, much more. There is no simple formula. But what seems clear from our visits to the other programs and the research that has been done is that the trauma and stigma of incarceration is unique and particular. The trauma and stigma and pain of incarceration is unique and particular. And it needs to be met not by throwing people who have been to prison into the mix of campus life and letting them sink or swim, but providing them a range of services sensitive to where they have been and allowing them to grab the supports they need as they need them. Community, as with the Chaz Center, will also be key. Peer mentoring seems to be a cornerstone of the successful programs that already exist. I take this quotation by Brady Heiner, the executive director of Project Rebound at Cal State Fullerton, very much to heart. He says, once you build the community, formerly incarcerated people living in safe and secure surroundings, once you build the community, people want to become a part of it. It's a loving, caring, compassionate, empowering space. That's what I want to build here. And this is our plan. Our plan is to spend the next year learning from systems involved people, which is to say formerly incarcerated people on our campus and on other campuses. Then, with the generous support of the Joyce Foundation, which is based in Chicago, and our own Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, we will be able to pilot some of the services that have been identified as being foundational to the success of formerly incarcerated students. We're going to start to build slowly, a center at Illinois, guided by what we learn from the individuals who will need to take ownership of that center. They will need to take ownership of it if it's to be successful. One impact, we believe, will be to increase the number of Black and Brown students at Illinois and provide them with supports that improve their well-being and increase their chances of graduating. But honestly, as important as that is, and it is very important, it's not my primary motivation. Speaking for myself, I've seen too many individuals of all racial identities get released from prison full of promise and ambition, full of hope, only to be stymied in their efforts to continue their education. They're held back because of policies, because of choices institutions have made here and elsewhere that make it difficult for them to get into school. And if they get into the school, difficult for them to feel welcome, to sign up for internships, to get a campus job, to get an off-campus job, to secure housing, to survive encounters with campus police who track their movements. They have to tolerate microaggressions from peers and teachers and manage to pay their bills on top of all that. It is too much. I don't know what happened to that slide. Imagine the University of Illinois, because that's what I wanted to show you right there. My vision, and that of many other EJP members, including our alumni, which is to say the formerly incarcerated EJP students, is that we will build together a loving and thoughtful community on campus. The strengths of this community will allow us to recruit individuals in prison who are passionate about continuing their education upon release, and allow us to meet them at the prison gates on the date of their release. My vision is that we will drive them back to this campus and introduce them to their new home. We will be able to provide them assurance that we will be able to provide them assurance that here they will be able to be provided what they need to recover from their imprisonment, reckon with their trauma and their pain, heal themselves, and devote themselves to intellectual pursuits. Higher education is not for everyone, and I'm not arguing that everybody in prison should become a University of Illinois student. I'm not arguing that everybody in Urbana should become a University of Illinois student. But for the hundreds of incarcerated individuals that I know can and deeply want to earn a degree from the University of Illinois, we can create conditions that allow them to move forward with their lives, make their families proud, make our state healthier, and do justice to the University of Illinois promise. And we will. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we are going to transition directly into the Q&A from here. And I know that I went around and collected question cards from a couple of folks, but if I didn't get it from you and you have a question, please just hold it up and I will come around and grab it from you as Rebecca starts to answer the couple of questions that have come in so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Should this center not be a part of the School of Should the center be a part of the School of Social Work? I guess is the question. Whoever wrote the question, maybe just raise your hand so I can say, hey, thanks for the question. Oh, hey, thank you for the question. I don't know that it should be a part of the School of Social Work. It's not clear to me. The Education Justice Project is in the midst of applying for center status on campus. And I think where this program ends up will be dependent on where EJP ends up. EJP is not currently part of the School of Social Work, but we very much value our relationship and the partnership that we have with social work. As you know, we spend a lot of time there recruiting people because we always know that social work students and faculty can be counted on to care about the students, the people that we work with, and our mission. So whether we are part of the School of Social Work or simply continuing to work closely with School of Social Work and rely on their expertise and their heart, I can definitely see that in the future. Next question. It's a great idea. And I am learning, oh, this is a nice note. It's a great idea. Thank you. Who wrote this? Thank you. And I am learning a lot attending these meetings. Thank you. Thank you for being here and thank you for your feedback. This is the next question. How selective is Project Rebound and related projects? Oh, that's a good question. Who wrote this? Oh, thank you. That was your question. Thank you. How selective is Project Rebound and related projects? Do all formerly incarcerated applicants get in? Oh my gosh. So I could spend another hour talking about that, as you can imagine. Project Rebound and Cal State Fullerton and all the programs, well, those are the two programs that provide housing. There are other programs that provide other services like counseling and peer mentoring and even financial assistance, but they don't include housing. So let me speak first to those programs that don't include housing, like the program at Cal State LA. There's no, and are you making, I think you're making a distinction between people who get into the program and people who get into the university. Okay. Once a student, let's put that question of admission to the university aside for 1 minute. Okay. Once a student gets into the university, the programs that do not provide housing have wide open doors. Anybody who is a student on campus and has a criminal record or an incarceration history or is on parole or probation and wants the services is welcome to come in and participate. For those programs, Cal State Fullerton and Rutgers that have housing, the criteria for getting into the housing is more difficult. Cal State Fullerton owns the house that I showed you, that beautiful house. So they are able to accommodate anybody that they decide. They do not rely on university oversight to decide who they're going to accommodate in their own house. But they do rely on the desire to create a safe and welcoming environment. So for example, all genders are welcome in the house, but they have to be sensitive to gender balance and space accommodations in order to ensure that people who are living there feel safe. Cal State Fullerton is able to admit people who have been convicted of sexual offenses by simply learning more about the situation and determining for themselves whether or not it was appropriate to let those people who have been convicted of sexual offenses live in the house. Often it is. The large universe of people who have been convicted of sexual offenses includes many, many, many people. And we actually have an event on this coming up on November 30th. I would encourage you not to jump to any conclusions about who is included in that universe of people who have been convicted of sexual offenses, because they are wide and diverse and have many, many different backgrounds and experiences that have brought them to that. Rutgers accommodates the students in its program in university housing. So it is subject to university rules. And the University of Rutgers University, as you know, it's a public university, one of the Big Ten. I'm aware this is being broadcast and I don't want to say anything that compromises my colleagues at Rutgers, but I will let you know that they have let me know that it is tricky and difficult to work with university administration, and they haven't had any success yet in housing anybody who has been convicted of a sexual offense. So they have many times tried to offer accommodation and housing to those individuals. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
You know what? So I used to have a mic, and it used to be so much easier. That was in the before time. Maybe if you could say it and I can repeat it.
And then you also talked about the other part of the actual mission in, right?
So the other part of the question, thank you for reminding me, concerns admission into the university in the first place. I advocate for the university not asking any questions about a person's criminal background or involvement with the criminal justice system, and admission being based on the criteria that it is typically used on for general admissions purposes. I don't think background should play any role at all. And that's what we'll be arguing for. I will say that there are many universities that our alumni have had much easier time getting into. Northeastern Illinois University, Roosevelt University, University of Illinois at Chicago. The different campuses have different weight that they put on a person's background. And I would hope that in keeping with our vision of ourselves at Urbana-Champaign as a campus concerned with and committed to racial justice, we would look anew at the policies that we employ in deciding who gets in and who doesn't get in. The only consideration should be academic promise and the contributions a person can make to our community here. And we know there's a wonderful article, in fact, called The Gifts They Bring, written by a formerly incarcerated scholar named Corey Green, who makes a very compelling case for the fact that people with criminal legal backgrounds who have been incarcerated bring a wealth of perspectives and orientations and knowledge to campus that we should embrace and seek to, and it's one reason of many reasons to seek to include more formerly incarcerated people among our students Not to mention, I'm not speaking only of students now, but I could also speak to among our staff and among our professoriate. Thank you.
So the questions have started rolling in, and we might not be able to cover all of them, but if we do want to continue until 1, that's perfectly fine. And here is the next round. No, you're good.
Not within 6 feet. Because there are so many questions, I'm just going to take a brief second to read through them because there might be one that covers more than one. You know how that is. Oh my gosh, yeah. Danielle's question is so obvious. Danielle Chenoweth, our township supervisor, is a friend of mine, so I recognize her orientation and her thinking process. Okay, some of these, I think I can address them all in 10 minutes, so I'll start with the ones that are easy to address. Who asked the question about Parkland? Does Parkland College have a program to transfer in? Oh, thank you. You know, we have an articulation agreement with Parkland College, right? But Parkland College, to my knowledge, does not have a special program, does not do special affirmative supports, does not provide affirmative supports for students that have been incarcerated. But yes, in fact, when we think about the logistics of this program, one of the ways we see it operating is that we will be doing recruitment from community colleges. Because many people, when they get out of prison and they decide to continue their education, will start first with the community colleges. For the same reason, students on the outside often start first with community colleges. Community colleges are less expensive and they're also more welcoming. We currently offer a scholarship, and I should share this here. We currently offer several scholarships of $1,000 each for students who have been incarcerated. And we advertise those at the community colleges, so we already have a relationship with both those offices, and that is one of the places that we expect we will be doing our recruiting. So Parkland, but also others from across the state. As you can imagine, as you may know, most people who are incarcerated in the state of Illinois come from Cook County. They don't come from Champaign County. So we would expect that most of our recruiting will come from the Chicagoland area. Does that answer your question? Thank you. The next question is, what is the relationship between recidivism and higher education? This is such a good question. Who asked it? Thanks, Chris. This is a really good question, and it's a really complicated question. Because no experiments have been done, we haven't been able to establish, nobody's been able to establish causation, but there is an awful lot of correlation between people who receive higher education, whether while incarcerated or on the outside in the free world, and criminal justice involvement. So people who receive higher education while incarcerated are less likely to recidivate. People who receive higher education while free are less likely to commit crimes that take them to prison in the first place. One of the things I like to say about recidivism in relation to the Education Justice Project students is that it's way too low a bar for us to think about for measuring success. Most of our students at the Education Justice Project, and I can figure out to go backwards, I'd put a much prettier. Cynthia, can you put the back? I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that. Oh, and even further back?
So you can just use that.
That's what there. Thank you. I'd much rather have you looking at our students than looking at a slide with my email address on it. Our students typically are serving long sentences for serious crimes, and they get out when they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s. And I'm not concerned about them recidivating, and I'm not concerned with students like them, with individuals like them recidivating. They're very low. The data suggests they're at very low risk of recidivism. most of our students were incarcerated before they were 18 and they're getting out at 30 or 40, 50s. They're different people who have worked so hard on themselves and on building up their lives and restoring their relationships with their families and their sense of self. My concern for them is not that they don't recidivate. My concern for them is that they do not live out their potential, that they aren't able to start their business or found that nonprofit or continue to that master's degree or run for public office or do those other things that they have in their head, in their heart, that they want to do to make an impact on the world. Our students are leaders. They're leaders in the prison and they have a potential to be leaders once they are released. And my concern for them is that they are not able, that opportunities and prejudice gets in the way of their fulfilling their potential. Our students are also not unique. There are people like EJP students in prisons across the state and across the country. And one of the things we certainly hope to do with this program, I've told you already that most of the programs like it are on the East Coast and the West Coast. There isn't a program like it in the Midwest or the West or the South. So one of the things we definitely want to do is the same thing we did with EJP when we started EJP 14 years ago. Develop a program, develop a model, and share it. Help other universities to do similar things and fitting with their own circumstances wherever they are in the country. Because all universities and colleges should be welcoming students with backgrounds. We are considering offering housing. We have talked to potential partners. I don't know if I'm at liberty to talk about who those potential partners are, but we've talked to potential partners locally, and I guess I have a new potential partner in the Housing Authority of Cunningham Township. So thank you for that. One of the biggest obstacles that people face upon release is finding housing, especially people who have been convicted of sexual offenses, but anybody who's been convicted. Urbana, as you know, is much easier than Champaign. Well, you may know that Urbana has an ordinance that forbids discrimination on the basis of criminal justice background, but it's not always followed. Champaign can be very, very difficult. So we're definitely interested in providing housing. Thank you, Daniel. From my observations, there's a huge divide at UIUC between engineering, technical sciences, and the humanities. How can students aid in breaking down barriers and promoting the same level of funding and acknowledgement for EJP and retention of formerly incarcerated students? Who wrote this question? Oh, thank you, thank you. You're right about the divide. I'm thinking that what you're asking is whether north of Green and south of Green, there's the same level of interest or commitment to social justice. Thank you very much for the question. And I'm afraid because everybody here is wearing a mask except me, it was hard for me to hear everything that the speaker said. But one of the things I think you were getting at was the funding model and whether it's possible to, we know that there's more monies north of Green, which is to say in the STEM side of campus than there is in the humanities side of campus. EJP is housed in the College of Education, which is one of the least funded colleges along with FAA, Finding Applied Arts, on campus. And the question was, how can we distribute funds more equitably across campus, which gets to the funding model for this initiative, which is a really good question and a real kettle of fish. In addition to relying on grant funds, we will also be seeking state support. And I imagine that will be part of a larger effort to support higher education and prison programs and positive outcomes for students getting released from prison. that we and many others are undertaking as part of the Freedom to Learn campaign in the next couple of years. So I'm not as confident about the funding coming from a redistribution of colleges and units on campus as a long-time solution as I am or hopeful about the fact that the state will recognize its interest in supporting this sort of initiative, which is what happens in New Jersey, for example. There's money in the state budget for the program at Rutgers. And the last question, I'll save this for last. It's from online. How can we, as students and staff, actively support the project effectively? Well, thank you. What a lovely question to ask. And I know everybody was thinking the same thing. What can you do? How can you get involved? And how can you support? At this point, the prison to gown pathway within EJP isn't a program as such. We're not taking applications from people to get involved and work with us. As I indicated, the first year is going to be about research and learning more and developing a blueprint for going forward in the second year, in which we start to offer some of the programs, some of the services, including housing and peer counseling we expect that have been identified in the needs assessment. But there are a couple of things you can do to get to support this. The first is please just talk about it. It would be such a great help if you let people know that this is happening. And especially if you think it is a good thing, share with them that you think it is a good thing, not a scary thing, not something that you're going to write your congressperson about because it makes you feel less safe on campus, but something that you welcome and that you will encourage, that you can encourage other people to welcome. One of the things that we're going to have to work hard to do, and we will need the help of people like you, is create a welcoming atmosphere on campus. At the Rutgers program and the Fullerton program, it's not necessary that students to be involved have to self-declare that they were formerly incarcerated. But clearly, if they're living in the housing, it's not difficult to determine that they have a incarceration background. And so those programs have had to work hard to create an atmosphere on campus of acceptance, of interest, of curiosity, of a desire to learn from people who bring the gifts that people who have been through incarceration bring to campus, and the ways in which they can enrich our knowledge, enrich our learning about criminal justice system, about reentry, about poverty, about crime, about redemption, about trauma, about healing, about all sorts of things. So it starts now creating that climate in which we speak in positive and encouraging and loving tones about our friends and families and neighbors who have been through prison, been to prison, have a criminal record. And that will grow, that can grow, that's a seed that is necessary for us to build the environment that is required for us to do this program with any kind of integrity. Because we cannot go to the prison gates and invite people to come back to Urbana-Champaign if we don't think they'll be safe here, if we don't think they will be welcomed here. So that's one thing that you can do. The second thing is just to get involved with the Education Justice Project, and there are signups outside to get our weekly newsletter. So you can learn more about when things start to happen about this program. You can read about the things that we put out related to the program and share them with your networks. And the third thing I'll say is not just related to this program and not just related to this effort. Thank you for being here. And in other spaces in your life as well, in your community, in your temple, in your church, in your place of employment, please help others to recognize the needs and the interests and the humanity of people who have been through prison. And where you have a place to speak on their behalf and to advocate for them in general or in the particular, please do so. People who have been to prison are people who have been to prison and who are now out of prison and seeking to build lives with us. I've never been to prison, but I spend enough time with people who have been and who currently are to know that it would be an honor and a privilege for this university to be more directly engaged with folks who have had that experience and that history, because we would all benefit so much from it. I think that's it, right, for the time? So should we just wrap it up? And thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for your presentation and then taking the time to answer the questions that the audience, both online and in person, had. I would like to urge you to join us next week to listen to Stacey Robinson, who is an artist who is actually being featured in Murphy and Clark through the Art of the Y exhibition. So he'll be with us next week. And then I also want to draw your attention to the QR codes that are on your seats. It's a brief evaluation that will allow you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your impressions of the lecture in the series this week. So thank you for your participation with that in advance. And thank you again to our sponsors and the teams working to put this series together. Have a great week.